Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. My name is Rob and today we're going to be painting some Horus Heresy Iron Hands. So I have done an Iron Hands tutorial not too long ago in a kind of this burnished brown red scheme. A little bit out there, a little bit different, bit of a I guess like a traitor scheme. Iron Hands is one of those ones where I think that as long as you use some black on them and use their insignia and their motifs, I think it's quite easy just to sell an Iron Hands army. But for that one I wanted to do a little bit of something different, and then for this one I'm going to go for something I guess more traditional in the way that we would view Iron Hands. I'm going to be using black and then the white insignias, but also I'm going to kind of be emulating the oil slick scheme that the original Forge World team came up with. Matt Kane, et al. But what I'm hoping to do is to create a scheme which is relatively straightforward to achieve, which I think is one of the things I would say, using lots of different Tamiya paints and lots of different inks or washes and things like that. It's sometimes a little bit of a hassle to create. So I just wanted something that was fairly straightforward and easy to reproduce, and could be applied to an army painting project, I guess. So without further ado, let's take it away. So first up, we're going to use a combination of death metal and dark emerald. I wanted greens within the scheme, and both of these colours are slightly green in tone. Death metal was probably too dark for what I needed, and dark emerald was probably too green for what I needed. So somewhere between the two, with a 50-50 mix of these two, I think will get you to where you need to be. And this is just sort of like laying down the base work for kind of the rest of our painting. We'll overlay this colour. Which is actually, like, I did hesitate after doing it because I was like, oh man, this is actually quite a nice colour. I wonder whether I actually need to do like a filter over the top of it or not. I did decide to do a filter over the top. We'll get to that a little bit later, but it might be that you just go, actually I just really like this colour. This is a cool looking colour, and as you can see, it's quite greeny in tone, and again it kind of harks back to that Forge World colour scheme, which like Mark Bedford and Matt Kane originally did when they were at the studio, kind of blazing a trail, I think, for what the legions kind of like look like nowadays. And I'm sure you've seen lots of people online, on Instagram, on Facebook, using a sort of scheme that kind of like looks like this. As I say, the original scheme uses kind of like purples, greens, yellows, all then filtered with Tamiya smoke over the top of it to kind of like darken it down and just bring all the colours together. What I'm going to do today, as I've described, is use a base coat of metallics and then use speed paints to kind of like filter the colours and change the colours slightly, to create a scheme that I think is just relatively straightforward. And as you can see here, we just apply this mix of death metal and dark emerald over a black base coat, and that's the first layer, and I guess the most important layer as well. If you want to use more green, then just add more green. If you want it to be darker, then just add more death metal. I think it's just down to entirely down to personal preference, how much of those colours that you use, and you'll probably want to experiment as well. And then from here, what we're going to do, we're going to use our Hive Dweller purple into the shadows of the model. Now, this is, I would describe, quite a strong and robust purple colour. I use it in all kinds of painting that I do, be it kind of like on Emperor's Children to shade them, or alternatively at the end of like muzzle burns and to create kind of distress weapons and things like that. But multiple layers of this over a certain area darkens it down a lot. Like, it's highly pigmented, so you can get some really nice purple shadows within this kind of green metallic colour that we've created. And it will start to create that kind of like contrast look that we might expect when we're using an airbrush, but also it just adds that kind of look that I'm ultimately going for with the greens and the purples, with that kind of like oil slick Iron Hands look to it as well. But we're using this to shade rather than using it in patches all over the model. From here, we're going to create our version, I guess, of Tamiya Smoke. which is we're going to use 3 parts brownish decay and then 1 part grim black. I didn't thin it down. There's absolutely no need to, but you just do need to be mindful that if you build this up over multiple coats, it can obviously get rid of the underlying metallics underneath. So just a thin coat all over the entire model is plenty, and then that will kind of just harmonize everything together, and that will again kind of reinforce that kind of like oil slick look as well. I did and ah about this. By that I mean I did wonder whether I needed it or not. I did like that kind of death metal dark emerald colour, just shaded with the purples. I think that looked really, really cool. But as I kind of was like, this is just a bit of a tester, I'll go through, stick to the original versions, to the original plan, and see what it looks like. But this is not necessary if you just like those 2 colours, that death metal dark emerald and then shaded with hive dweller purple. But if you want something that looks like the 360 video right at the start, then do this. Brownish decay, really, really nice colour. I've been trying to use it more and more in my work. Just used it a lot with some Trench Crusade stuff recently, so it's nice to use it through the airbrush. Right, we're going to create some like subtle black stripes on this. Now with iron hands, I think you can get away with either doing black stripes or white stripes. White stripes will obviously show up more clearly, but I wanted something really subtle on this against the dark metallic colour, and you can just about see it in the photos. You can just about see it, and that's exactly what I was going for. I wanted a really, really subtle effect, nothing that stood out too much. And you might be asking, why am I doing this with a sponge? To be honest, I just couldn't be bothered masking it all up and then airbrushing it, so I thought like 2 pieces of masking tape, I'll just sponge this on. It's really straightforward, really simple to do. And then what happens is it creates a really just subtle black stripe that we can put our iron hands insignia and motifs over, and that is a common theme that I've used throughout these models, which is wherever there is black, I've then added a white decal, a white transfer. I never used white transfers just straight on that kind of like oil slick plate. It was only ever over the black, and I think that if I was to expand this force, that would be something that I would do over the force, which is that we have only ever white transfers over black, be it knee pads, shoulder pads, stripes, whatever. I think it looks really, really good, and it will be easier for some of the stages a little bit later as well, that you'll see. So we're going to use plate mail metal next. Whatever silver you want, it's got to be quite a light silver, and it's got to be quite a robust silver. So ideally you don't want to be going kind of like back over this multiple times, just because that's such a time sink. So you want a 1 coat silver over this model and over the trim. Mark II are just it's quite nice to paint Mark II. There's a fair amount of stuff you got to block in with the silvers, but it's not too laborious. I can imagine, like, I was only doing 2 models here. I can imagine if you were to use, I don't know, like it will do like 10 or 20. It would take time, but these things always do when you're blocking in metallics. What you can start to see though is, particularly on the shield, is the purple within the shadows, and then our kind of like oil slick. I want to call it an oil slick colour, kind of our iron hands scheme colour, and you can start to see a contrast between the two now. Now that our light silver's on, and once I'd done the light silver, I wasn't necessarily convinced, and then once I did the light silver, I was like, okay, we are heading in the right direction. This is bringing it all together. From here, I then painted the shoulder pads pure black. I didn't use any highlights on the shoulder pads. I didn't use any highlights of grey, any blues, anything like that at all. It was just really important that it was a flat matte black, just again to add that contrast to the model. And you know, I quite like just using flat matte black when painting legions. If you've seen my Dark Angels tutorial, that is just literally a flat matte black, and I thought it would just be appropriate here. And because it's so dark, it then lightens up kind of the other parts of the model as well. I think looking at these, I was like, man, I'd love to try this on a vehicle, like on a Rhino or something like that, or on a Dreadnought. I thought, you know what, it could be really, really interesting to create something that looks like this. And again, it's kind of like slightly oil slick. It uses some of the ideas and some of the colours, but I suppose it's my spin on it. I glossed the model, then added transfers. Again, I've used white transfers as I described over the black elements. And just as an FYI, if you use the code MEDAS5, you'll get 5% off at thearmypainter.com. So if you want to pick up any colours that I've used today, you can get 5% off by using the code MEDAS5. Back to the tutorial though, you can see here why I've used black as well. So I'm just sponging on some black paint onto the transfers just to show that that first layer of paint is started to pull away, started to be scratched off. And because I haven't highlighted the black, I don't need to worry about any color transitions. It's just flat black, so I can just use the same matte black that I used on those on the stripes and on the shoulder pads as well. So really straightforward to do, but I think that this is an important part of the process just to make it feel like the Iron Hands models are in the thick of battle. This is literally the first layer of paint. Like, it's the last layer of paint to go on these transfers, so it's the first layer of paint that will be scraped away in battle. So it's important to have kind of like chips and scratches into them. You can do this with a blade if you want to. I've done videos where I've done that before, but when you've got just straight up matte black underneath, adding in scratches and chips and things like that is just so simple with a sponge, or as you can see me doing here, with a paintbrush. Right, next up we are going to be using plate mail metal, which is the same metal that we used for our trim. From here you can just see that I'm just applying it in patches over the model, just being careful. You don't need to go too heavy with this, but just showing the underlying kind of like chipping, just showing that there's a metallic underneath. I'm not gonna get into what color ceramite is, absolutely no need. It's just to show some kind of like chipping where the kind of like the paintwork has pulled away from the ceramite, and then the benefit of using the same color is that if we hit the trim, it's the same color, so I don't need to worry about it. So this is what it looks like so far. If you're wondering how to do decals, I've done loads of videos about decals before. I've done a whole tutorial about how to apply decals, so you should go check that one out. And then because the model is glossed, I didn't feel the need to gloss it again. You know, I didn't feel the need to kind of like protect the transfers again, because I knew that I would just be careful at this stage. If you're doing it en masse, or you're a bit more heavy-handed, or you do vehicles, you might want to re-gloss at this point just before you apply the oils. I didn't feel the need, but I am using lamp black, which is Winsor & Newton oil paint here. I use oil paints often in my videos. They're very horusheresy. If you've been in the scene for a little while, you know, they're a scale model or scale modeling kind of like technique, and really straightforward and easy to use. I've just mixed this with a little bit odorless white spirit, and I'm just applying it with an old paintbrush, and it's pin washing the model. I'm using it to really saturate the silver areas. So you know, with the actual armor plate, I'm just applying this as a pin wash. With any silver areas, I'm being a bit more heavy-handed, as you can see on this trim here, and then just literally lathering it on, just to stain and go into the gaps and the nooks and the crannies of the silver trim. This has the benefit of kind of like knocking everything back. Like, this is a black pin wash. It will knock everything back, and again, it will make it feel a bit more Iron Handsy. So if you want something a bit darker, then wait, trust the process. Wait for this stage, and then you'll be able to judge it a little bit better, because this just knocks the whole thing back. So if you like your Iron Hands kind of in black plate, this just might be the perfect solution, and you want to do something a little bit different, this might be the way to do it. Right, next up, so I needed just a little bit of a clean up, so with a cotton wool bud dipped in some clean white spirit, I'm just applying this over the model where I've been just a little bit heavy-handed. And this is the benefit, of course, with oils. You know, they're not like washes or tones or whatever. You know, once they're down, it's going to be nearly impossible to kind of like lift them away. But with oils, because they have an exceedingly long kind of like curing and dry time, it does mean that I can kind of wick away if I've been a little bit heavy-handed with it. just as I'm doing here. So this will mean that over the top of the surface of the model, I can wick away any ugly kind of like oil stains that I've got. However, in the nooks and the crannies where I can't reach with that cotton wool bud, you will get the kind of the oils remaining, which is exactly what you want from a pin wash. Right, next up. So I think this is a personal preference, this one. I used a mixture of, well, I tried satin first and it was quite shiny, but does give like a metallic look to the armor. So if you want kind of like a bit of a sheen and a shine to the armor, then use satin. I decided I wanted something a little bit kind of something matted down, so I actually used 2 parts matte to 1 part satin on the models in the end, just because I was like, I'm not quite happy with this satin. So if you're not sure, try 2 parts matte to 1 part satin, or just try a matte, which will look cool. But if you do want something shiny then and more metallic in its kind of like nature, then I would recommend that you use a satin varnish. And then once that's done, basically we're almost at the home stretch here, which is we've just got the eye lens and some blood effects and the bases to do. So with the eye lenses, I painted them black. It's up to you what color eye lens you want to use, but you can kind of use the same technique here, which is paint the eye lens black, and then I've painted it with regal blue, just leaving a kind of like an edge of black around the outside. It's always a little bit tricky kind of painting something so small with a camera between me and the model. So use a small brush here. These kinds of lenses are actually much easier to do than kind of like normal Space Marine lenses. You don't have to worry about like the dot or anything like that. And as we get towards kind of like the front of the grill, or where the nose would be, that's where it'll get lighter and lighter and lighter. So if you haven't got a steady hand, this kind of like eye lens is kind of perfect, really. So once we've applied that regal blue, we'll just wait for it to dry, and then we'll apply crystal blue. And this is probably being applied to like 66% of that eye lens, whereas before that regal blue was being applied to 100%. So that band of light that we're working in just gets smaller and smaller and smaller as we get to the front of the eye lens. And again, it's up to you if you want to make it glow. Like I didn't on this one. I've done a lot of glowing eye lenses recently, so I wanted a little bit of a change. But with bright sapphire, we can just apply that to the center around the 30 to 20% mark. And if you want it even brighter, you can mix that bright sapphire with pure white and then just do the front 5 or 10%, and then that will make it seem kind of, it's very, very bright. So not quite a glowing effect, but close to a glowing effect. And then I have sorted out the bases here, done the bases. I've done exactly the same as I did in my Arachne video, which you can go back and have a look at, but I've then applied dry blood. So I wanted slightly darker blood, so dry blood is the perfect option here, and just applied this with a sponge on the chain axes, just to again show that they're in the thick of the fight with the traitors. Really, really simple to do. You can do blood. This is just such an easy way to like do blood splashes and things like that. I often use a sponge just to have a bit more control rather than kind of like slopping it on with a brush. And then you can see here the finished article, the finished model. So dark enough to register as iron hands because of the black oils, just because it's just relatively dark, but it's still got that vibe and that look. You can see the greens, the brownish colours and the purples within the shadows, particularly when it's in the hand, to kind of like register as that kind of like oil slick look. I think for me though, this is just really straightforward and relatively easy to achieve with a relatively small color palette. This is also perfect if you're just new to airbrushing. I think you want to do iron hands. A lot of it is just painting in and filling in the black sections. So nothing too kind of like complicated here, and quite a forgiving scheme as well. Guys, I hope you enjoyed it. Just a few final thank yous from me. So the first one is a big thank you to my Patreons who have really allowed me over the course of 2025 to do more tutorials and kind of do exclusive tutorials for them and exclusive Q&As as well. Like, without their support, it would just be really hard to continue at the pace that I am at the moment. So if you do want to support me, you can sign up for £4 a month. And you get a tutorial, an extra 1 or 2 tutorials each month, and a Q&A from me as well. And then another big thank you to the Army Painter for supporting my videos, supporting me, supporting all my mad endeavours, and allowing me to create these YouTube videos as well. Without them, it would be very hard, if not impossible, to again create content at the pace that I do. And then a final thank you to you guys for watching as well. I hope you enjoyed it. Hopefully this is useful for you guys. Hopefully you've picked up a few new tricks, and I hope to see you on the next one. Take care, guys. See you soon.